In this video, we'll reveal a few tips and tricks that you could use on your waiver wire in any fantasy sport. I'm Alan Seslowsky, along with RotoWire, Tim Schuler. The waiver wire is where it's won. Would you agree with that?
I do. Unless you get really, really lucky in your draft, or you hit on a couple of lottery picks. You're really working the corners is a whole season-long process. So if you can gain just a little bit of an edge every week, that will play out over the course of a season.
Which sport do you prefer the waiver wire in?
If I have the time, baseball by far. You're going to get the edge on baseball. If you're willing to work the corners, you can run your whole process. The little edges you're going to get and just kind of outworking everybody else is going to play out over a baseball season more than any other sport. I think the luck factor is way less in baseball.
Take me through a typical week.
Your best bet is to start that process at least leading up to the week. We all follow baseball. We probably have plenty of time on a Tuesday night or whatever. So if you see a prospect, if you hear a vibe or whatever, at the very least, just write that person's name down, write that player's name down, get it off to the side, have it in your queue. You can juggle it later. At least start that on a very informal level. It probably doesn't even take any more time than you're already watching or putting into it. And then at some point, before you kind of hit the ground running hard on Sunday, you're going to want to go through your leagues, who's available. You really want to do by the time you get into Saturday or whenever you have time between Friday and that key deadline on Sunday is run through all your free agent. It's going to be different in every league. Some run very deep, some are very shallow, and a lot of names are going to be available. So you literally have to sort with some mechanism and run through every player that's available just to see who's out there. And I'll even add, Alan, your sort mechanism is pretty important. What you want to do is, do we really have time to run through every single MLB player that's acquired a stat all year? That's a waste of everybody's time. So what I do is I take the last 30 days and I look at 30 days of history and I say, anyone who's at least played a full game, let's at least eyeball that name. I might be skipping, 95% of the names are not even for consideration, but do not rule out anyone in the universe. You never know. You never know who's going to win your title.
So do you look at pure past production, or are you looking ahead to see matchups? How much of that is weighted back and forth?
No, good question. I take who's available. I start there and I basically come up with a list of who would I even consider as an ad. Part two of that is I need someone to drop. I take the list of players that are better than that drop that I've identified. So it might be 11 players, it might be 2 players, but as long as I'm making that equation, are these particular guys that I'm considering adding, are they better than the guy I know I'm going to drop this week? Is he injured? Is he just playing terrible? So I take it from there. And then I say, these players are better. Now let's look at matchups. Now let's look at, is this guy going to get a ton of playing time? Is he a pitcher that has incredible starts for next week? And then I'll take, say, those 11 players and I'll rank them out. I'll say, now I got the 2 guys I really need to go after. I need to put more than a couple of bucks on these guys. And I put it together that way.
How are you allocating the dollars as a percentage? So
how do I stand in my league right now? If I'm hurting, I need to roll the dice a little bit, and I can't afford to let the obvious player, this obvious pitcher that's going to be in the rotation all year, I'm going to have to eat up some FAAB early and just get that guy. And it is time. It is whatever, June 10th-ish this weekend, and I need to make that play now that I'm not going to win unless I make some aggressive moves and hit my FAAB really hard. Whereas if you're in the driver's seat, you have a nice team, you're kind of just tweaking things along the way, because maybe, let's call it $1,000, maybe that I'm going to need that $700 for a closer in the last month or 2 of the season. So that's one key point. The other is, and people forget about this a lot, your dollars have value for the amount of time you're going to get a player for the year. So it is actually worth it to bid more on a player knowing I'm going to get 5 months of time out of that player as opposed to just a month or so. So you really need to weight your dollar allocation according to how long that guy's going to be on your team.
In leagues that allow you to do $0 bids or free pickups, do you get more aggressive in the earlier part of the season rather than hold that budget to see when you might need it?
A ton, because you can just flip your roster. Half these guys are on your bench anyway, so you can just flip that as you need. The $0 bid really gives you that chance to take lottery picks because you're doing it for free essentially. And why have, let's talk football. You have a bunch of veteran receivers with very little upside. Why not just stash some running backs who are costing you nothing? Right. And the key to FAAB, honestly, is not, making your right choice. And you're only going to be able to outbid, every single team in your league once in a while. Eventually, they'll have more money than you if you play that game. But if you identify the player a week, one FAAB period before everybody else, that is a true key. So again, in football terms, if I throw a couple of good stash running backs on there and they happen to be on my bench while everyone else is looking for them the next week, well, you're going to win that. You're going to win that battle every time then.
I think that's a really sharp strategy. I just want to underline it. It's combing depth charts for running back 2s that are on the waiver wire or running back 3s in a deeper league, putting them on there and, not getting so attached to your late round picks. Anyone that you pick in your startup draft or your seasonal draft in round 13 through the end, those are just glorified waiver wire picks anyway, aren't they?
Exactly. Their upside is you can get another guy like that. Even if some other manager picks up that guy you dropped who's a very average player, you're just going to go find someone. So in those $0 leagues, you can get really aggressive. You can churn your lineup a lot on the bottom, guys you're not starting, and just hope for those, kind of lottery ticket type of players.
Is it not good to hold that hammer into the end? What would be the advantages and disadvantages to being the guy with the hammer, the most amount of FAAB in the last third of the season?
Well, go the other way first. Let's talk about early on. If you see, especially in these competitive leagues, the more teams that are in your league, if you can find the save is a good example. Okay, there's going to be a major league team that changes closers early on in the season. There's an obvious closer available. It is so worth it, and saves are so scarce to just throw 60%, 70% of your budget at those obvious saves, because now you just found the guy. Those are the guys where you will spend heavy. If that doesn't happen and you're just not one of the 1 to 4 teams that lands on one of those guys, then you almost play it the other way. You need to have money when you get to the end of the season, because now the injuries hit. Now you have all these no one has a red filled bloody lineup the first week of the season. We're all feeling great and we're all looking good going into that, but try that in baseball in early September. It's a bloodbath out there. So you're going to need some money to outbid for those twice a week starters and guys like that.
The reason I like spending up a little bit in the beginning is because you're also competing with less people. Most people have given up. I would say half your league has given up in the last third of the season as well. If you're lucky that they're sending lineups in a casual league. What do you think the biggest mistake even experienced players make?
They just forget about it. They're in enough leagues and they might run their FAAB process and they might think it's done on a Sunday morning. That is a huge, huge mistake. If you're like, I'm good, you know what I mean? I can go to the beach and see who I got at 7 or 10 o'clock at night, because you're going to come back and you'll be like, oh, that guy got hurt. That closer just blew up today and he might have the job. So even if it's 10 minutes, you need to check in and see what happened that day. How often does it happen in football? There's a late injury or something like that. So whenever you run your FAAB process, always, even if you're limited on time, always make sure you make that last check-in before the FAAB actually runs. Deadlines are different. We're all in 4 different websites. We have different commissioners. We have some that don't like to run it on Sunday. The worst thing to do is miss a deadline. And the last thing I wanted to say, when you run your FAAB process, again, whether it's baseball or football, always, before you put in your bids, before you let that process run, always mentally or actually physically go do it. Set your roster for the next week. I cannot tell you, playing for all these years, how many times it's happened where you're high-fiving your co-manager. We got this guy. Oh, we only have 8 pitchers for next week, and now we have a dead spot. So always set your lineup, and what position you can't pick up and what you can be more aggressive on, because you're not going to have dead spots in your lineup the next week.
It's not too late to check out RotoWire Premium Upgrade. Check out behind our paywall for free right now. Go in there for a couple days. You can see all of our premium articles, podcasts, our top 400 prospect rankings, and our fantasy football rankings are now live. You can see everything for free. Go to rotowire.com/try.